on the Inception Radio Network. And we have with us on Skype Reverend Michael Carter, and he is an ordained interfaith minister. We were just talking about UFOs and the Bible, and we were talking about both the New and Old Testament. So let's hear a little bit more about interpretations of the Old Testament.
Okay.
You know, I grew up in the 50s and in New York City, and I remember seeing many times the Ten Commandments. And so I have memories of those images on the screen. And tell us about what your interpretations or that have been written about in terms of UFOs and the Bible.
Okay, I will. One of the things that intrigued me with the Old and the New Testament was that the obsession Yahweh has with sexuality, in the sense of these angels, every time they visit a woman, she gets pregnant. I mean, it's a great job. Gabriel has a wonderful job. Everybody, I mean, now the women are older, but you know, when Abraham and Sarah, she's past the way of women. The next thing you know, she's pregnant. Samson's wife, who doesn't even merit a name in the Old Testament, she winds up pregnant. I mean, wherever they go, and of course we have John the Baptist and Miriam, who is the mother of Jesus. And I said, wow, this is really interesting. He did not want intermarriage, even though one of Moses' wives was a dark-skinned Egyptian, Egypt being in Africa at the time and still is today. But these were little clues. And then I'm reading Ezekiel again, chapter 4. This is in the Tanakh, chapter 4, verse 12. The Lord, now let's be clear, the Lord could be Yahweh. The Lord could also be the commander of a ship, because the term is used interchangeably. But he says, the Lord says to him, eat it as a barley cake. You shall bake it on human excrement before their eyes. So says the Lord, shall the people of Israel eat their bread, unclean among the nations to which I will banish them. And then Ezekiel says, but Lord God, my person was never defiled, nor have I eaten anything that died of itself or was torn by beasts from my youth. In other words, I've kept kosher. And then the Lord says to him, great, I allow you that. You shall eat cow's dung instead of human excrement. Prepare your bread on that. Now, no one's going to preach this on Friday at sundown, and they're not going to preach it on Sunday in traditional churches. But I had to say, what kind of God would have anybody, much less his prophet, eat excrement on a piece of bread to get a point across?
It is shocking.
It is shocking
in terms of modern sensitivities.
Yes.
And there are parts of the Bible that defy our traditional monotheistic view of God, because I remember sections of the Old Testament talking about gods coming down and having relations with women. And
Genesis 6 is the chapter.
And the traditional interpretation was these weren't gods, they were giants. That's the word they used.
Yeah.
But I think that was more of a fig leaf than really the accurate translation, which maybe you could tell us about that.
Well, the Elohim, the translation is Elohim. We're looking in Genesis 6. Let's look at it. This is the Aramaic Bible, English translation. It says, it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God, Elohim, saw that the daughters of men were fair. So they took the wives from anyone they chose. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also after that, the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, and they became giants, who in the olden days were mighty men of renown. Many people say these giants were the Anunnaki. The book of Enoch goes into this in great detail. even gives the names of some of the fallen angels, who if I say where you see angelos, just put et, because angel only means messenger. Nowhere in the Bible does it say these people have wings.
Right.
Nowhere. I just figure our ancestors put wings on them to let us know they could fly.
Hmm.
Yes.
The Bible describes angels as looking humanoid, not with wings, and that I found that fascinating. That I'd never really given it much thought. When did the angels start having wings? And I guess it was with the proliferation of art that happened in Christianity, because both in Islam and in the Jewish faith, we are forbidden to paint images or have
That's right.
statues to
That's
worship.
right. That's right. And so I believe they were trying to tell us they could fly. But I'm looking at Amos chapter 5. What verse is this here? Where's the verse? Verse 8. He's saying to Amos, who made the Pleiades? Who made Orion? Okay, these are star systems. These are constellations. How did people know 6,000 years ago that there was even something called the Pleiades or Orion? So these were clues to me that these so-called angels, or gods, if you will, or lords, were most likely they were off-world intelligences. I don't know any other way to interpret it.
It's a fascinating interpretation, and it
Yes.
reflects the point of view that UFOs, and if it is extraterrestrial in nature, ET visitations have been going on for so long, for thousands of years,
Yes.
that one might not even choose to refer to them as visitors, because if they've been here and have been described in the New and Old Testament, and we see images that look like saucers and small beings with spacesuits on the walls of caves
Yes.
in southern France and northern Spain.
Yes.
These paintings go back 20, 30,000 years. And so we're left with the idea that this may be a permanent condition of our planet, to have these off-world cultures present here. Let's talk a little bit more about the different phenotypes, which is the medical term, biological term for classifying biological entities by their appearance. What are the phenotypes of some of the beings that you experienced? You described what is called typically the gray, although your description was that the individual you saw was more white with wraparound eyes.
More chalk white, yeah. There was the reptilians.
Let's talk about the reptilians, because there's a whole subculture of fear within the UFO community that labels this particular phenotype as evil and as bad. This is something that the people that I know as experiencers don't describe, but yet it's out there in the literature. What is your experience with the so-called reptilians?
My experience with them was just that they came to visit. On two different occasions, one walked through my wall, put his hand on me while I was lying in bed and told me not to be afraid. He was very, very muscular. He had a greenish, gray, scaly type of skin, very built. I didn't see any insignia on anything. Well, I wasn't even looking for that. I was just in awe that this being should just walk into my apartment on the 15th floor of the Excelsior Hotel. His again, could have been a she, but I'm saying his eyes were yellow, but the pupils were vertical instead of horizontal. Yes.
Mm-hmm. How tall was this particular being?
This being was as tall as his head could have scraped the ceilings in that in that hotel room. So I would say about 6.5, 7 feet easily. Maybe taller.
Yeah, I would say taller, because the building code allows people who are 6.5, 7 feet tall to walk in without crouching down. So
he wasn't crouching, but he was huge. I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. He was, but it makes sense. He was probably taller. I was just flabbergasted. I was trying to get to wrap my mind around the Grays, who were 4 feet tall. And then this brother comes in, who could have had a career in the NBA, probably. I mean, he was huge.
Mm-hmm.
He was also as huge. I tell you, another huge one was the Nordic person, was the Bomb Blue Eye. Now, his head almost scraped the wall, and he had a hoodie on. He had that cowl on. So those are the three, but he was the one who healed me with the blood clot. So these are the three races. I have not seen the praying mantis. Have not seen any light beings. Ray and I had talked about that, not tonight, but a lot of people said they've seen beings of light. I have seen, as a child, I told you I saw those orbs. I guess one could say they were light beings, but I don't know. But those were the three races that were anthropomorphically built with a torso, arms, and legs. The reptilian had a tail. The reptilian had a tail, like a it was a tail,
like a dinosaur or a large lizard.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And you said that you got the message not to be afraid. Was that?
That's what he told me. He said, "Don't be afraid." He said, "Do not be afraid."
No, you said he said it, or he communicated
in my head. In my head.
Did you hear a voice, or was it your own voice that was speaking?
No, it was his voice. Do not be afraid.
And what was the quality of the sound inside your head?
It was like I had speakers in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Like my ears were speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did you immediately take comfort from that? What was your reaction?
No, I took no comfort. I want to elaborate on that. And then he just walked out. He walked out. He just looked me deep in the eyes, and I was like mesmerized. And he walked out. He walked out of the 15th floor of a building.
Now, there is the theory that many of our encounters with non-human beings takes place not in physical 3D or 4D reality with time, but that it happens in a kind of virtual reality situation. I've promoted this idea under the rubric of what I call the virtual experience theory. And we've all seen the movie The Matrix, or at least most of us have. Yeah. And I just wonder, did you ever get a sense while you had these visitations, beings being able to walk through walls, that they were not necessarily physically present, but they were more, say, a holographic projection? Was there anything about their presence that suggested that you may have been in some kind of holographic matrix?
I wasn't even sophisticated enough to think about that at the time. To put your hand on me and to tell me, to not be afraid, to me, that it was in my own reality. I'm open to that, but it was real because he touched me. Mm-hmm. To my mind. I want to go back to the fear factor. The fear, it took me many, 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 many years to get past that, and I still would have fear. If I had a visit tonight, depending on who, what, when, where, that initial fear was there. But that was because of the bizarreness and the high strangeness of the whole scenario. But what I did with that fear is I said to myself, where else in your life are you letting fear restrict you? And that helped me get a lesson from that, whether it was from people who were different or different experiences. I just said, now this fear you have got to get a grip on it. And so where else in your life are you letting fear restrict you from being the person you say you want to be? And that was one of the lessons that I'm not saying they intentionally wanted that, but surely they know that we live on a planet that's full of fear. And so to master that would be to at least get in touch and to be aware of my own fear, whether it's of them or anybody or anything that's the other.
Whitley Strieber, in one of his books, talks about the notion that we are hardwired to react to an unknown animal, a large animal, as potential predator. And so the fear reaction that we have is part of our evolutionary development, because if you're a primitive man ape and you find a large, powerful animal that you've never seen before, now you may be a hunter and thinking perhaps you can kill it for lunch, but then again, a powerful animal might want to kill you for dinner. So I think it's important to recognize that we have certain instinctual reflexes that reacts to an unknown animal that's large and powerful, perhaps more powerful than we are, as potential predator. And that flight or fright reaction is very hard for us to overcome. Nevertheless, people can contemplate contact with more than just primitive fear, as you have, and turn it into a healing type of process where you can examine not just fear of a large reptilian, but also generalize it and find yourself asking the question, what other parts of my life have made me fearful?
Well, I also had the fear at the same type of fear of the 4-foot chalk-colored person as well. So it wasn't just because this guy, of the way he looked. I mean, it was just the unknown and just the high strangeness of it. So I concur with you wholeheartedly. But I'm saying I still had the same abject fear from a 4-foot, almost androgynous-looking person in a Reynolds Wrap jumpsuit.
Right. Did the reptilian have an aura? You mentioned you have the capacity to see auras in humans, and also in that so-called gray, the little guy with wraparound eyes.
Yes.
Did the reptilian and did the Nordic type that was involved with your healing in 2013, did they have auras?
I did not see them. If they did, I did not see them. I did not see them. I did see that apple green ray come out of his hand. That I saw.
The healing energy.
Yeah, from the Nordic brother. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was directed towards your groin, which would be or your abdomen, which would be
hit me right in the abdomen.
Was it the upper abdomen or the lower abdomen?
It was the lower abdomen. It was right where the chakra, the 1, 2. Okay, there's the root. There's the second. Right where the third chakra is. Yeah, and I didn't feel it. I just saw it hit me. I didn't feel anything.
And for those people who didn't hear the first part of our interview, Reverend Michael Carter describes dramatic healing at the hands of a Nordic-appearing extraterrestrial that directed some energy at his swollen leg from a deep venous thrombosis. And overnight, the healing, the decrease in swelling that should take several weeks to a month, completely resolved, and his doctor was surprised, as would I have been if you had gone to me with that story. But I would have been far more receptive than the physician you spoke to in terms of the extraterrestrial component.
Well, I'll tell you, my ex-wife, my second wife, she and my daughter, because I didn't have the presence of mind to take a picture of before and after, but they had seen my leg. They were privy to my encounters, and that's the first thing they said. They said, "Oh my God, your leg, it's healed."
Amazing.
So they were like, they could be witnesses to that.
That's very important to have other people validate your experience.
Yes.
Now, we talked a bit about the Bible, the Old and New Testament, but there are other faiths as well. And one of the aspects of the book that I found fascinating was that you talk about the Buddhist traditions, Hindu traditions, as well as Islam. Let's go through that a little bit so that the audience can hear about other holy scriptures that mention the possibility of extraterrestrials. Which one would you like to start with?
I'll start with Buddhism, because it's more of my own personal philosophy of life. Yeah, I mean, the Buddha, whether it's the Pali Canon or the Theravada tradition or the Mahayana tradition, they all talk about the Buddha in past lives and in the present life he had before reaching enlightenment, having contact with other beings, other deities. And I would suspect that I mean, some of these beings seem like they were coming from actually other dimensions. So I just assumed that they are very open to life in other dimensions and other galaxies. And the Buddha was having contacts constantly in meditation these with these beings. They're even mentioned in the Dhammapada. At least some of the experiences are. What was fascinating to me, Buddhism coming out of the Hinduism of that time, I always felt that Catholicism and Hinduism would fare very well during, if there's ever going to be disclosure, because they make room in their cosmology for different deities. Whereas Christianity only privileges, of course, this one supreme being, and there are other angels, but there's a strict hierarchy there. Whereas Hinduism and Catholicism,
You
they
say
have,
Catholicism, but I think you mean something else, correct? Or is it
well,
Catholicism?
well, Catholicism makes room for various angels,
Hmm.
various saints and angels. There's there you could say that they were helpers, if you will. As in Hinduism,
Hmm.
Christianity, traditional Christianity, really doesn't lend itself to that. So it has a hard time incorporating
Yes.
other other beings as valid, as real. They can exist, but it's all about this one God. Whereas Hinduism and Catholicism makes room for other angels, for other deities, and that they are part of. They may be different aspects of the one God. Christianity doesn't allow for that. There's God, and then there's these lesser folk.
What you're saying makes very good sense because present and past popes have all talked about the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligent life, and even discussion of the possibilities in terms of a spiritual mission to share the faith of Jesus with extraterrestrial beings if they ever
Yes,
manifested.
yes.
This is in marked contrast to more fundamentalist Christian groups that have a very different slant on it. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, when I first started 20, 25 years ago talking about this, um, there was great um, resistance to more conservative, evangelical, fundamentalistic brothers and sisters. They just could not wrap their minds around it. Now, what a difference a generation makes. They have made room for it in their cosmologies, but they're all evil.
Mm.
They're all evil. See, and again, there's that fear factor. I don't understand it, so they're evil. Um, and this is going to be a problem when, well, disclosures, we can argue it's happening now in some ways, but it's going to be a problem. Whereas, again, Hindu, Catholic, they make room
Hmm.
for, yes, they're other deities, they're other beings, they're gods with a small g, if you will. And so that's not a problem. The universe is teeming with life. And so now I want to go to the Quran. In the Quran, uh, in first of all, the Quran, when Gabriel, okay, there's Gabriel again because he's also in the Christian New Testament. Gabriel tells Muhammad to recite to recite. His prayer talks about Allah being Lord of all the worlds, plural.
Plural, plural. Hmm.
Yes. He is the Lord of all the worlds. And so I'm looking at the surah here, um, surah in the Quran, chapter 26, verse 192. Verily, this is the revelation from the Lord of all the worlds.
Yes.
And then we have I'm sorry, go on. You were going to say something.
Well, Islam, from your book, I found this fascinating, recognizes the existence of a separate species of beings. The
Oh,
first,
jinns, the jinns.
right, and let's talk a little about jinns, because there's they said they appear to be possibly ETs,
Yes,
and
they
when
do.
when and when prophet was reciting the Quran, according to your interpretation, these jinns or possibly ETs made appearances in the sky. Is that correct?
Yes, here we have, yes. And again, there are other verses about talking about the worlds, more than one world. Uh, that Allah identifies himself as Lord of the worlds is a strong sentiment because it presupposes more than one world. Now, Islam recognizes the existence of three species of beings. There are the angels, sometimes referred to as Malaik, and they're known as beings of light. Then there are human beings. Lastly, there are beings known as jinns. And I believe that these jinns are ETs, which is different from angels. The
Mhm.
the literal meaning of the word jinn is to conceal one's presence or to
Right.
hide from observation. And
Hmm.
so in the Quran, Muhammad says, it has been revealed to me, this is chapter 46, verse 29, it has been revealed to me that a company of jinns listened to the Qurans when he was reciting it. And they said, we have heard a wonderful recital and interpretations. And he says, they are able to travel through space because he says the jinns know that we cannot escape Allah on earth, nor can we escape him through flight.
Well, that's fascinating. So, right there in the Quran, there's a reference to a
Yeah.
non-human being that can travel through space and was present at the initial recitation of the Quran. So
Yes.
that, hopefully that will help people of the Islamic faith to embrace contact with something other than fear, because their prophet was giving a sermon of
Yes.
sorts to space beings.
Right. And there is a wonderful book which I used in researching that book called by Abdul Aziz Khan, Abdul Aziz, Aziz Khan, Khan, called UFOs in the Quran.
Hmm. You
And
have that reference.
yes, it's a wonderful book. It's a
Very good.
wonderful book.
And I spent many years among the Baha'is. I was active in that faith for 10 years. And the Baha'is are an independent religion that was established in Persia, now called Iran, in the 1840s. And in the sacred works of that faith, they too write about all the stars have their attendant planets with beings on them.
Yes.
And and so one of the things about the Baha'i faith is that they believe in progressive revelation, and they teach the doctrine that in every historic period, the deity, the universe, God, whatever term we want to use, he, she, it sends to humanity a messenger with a special book for that time, Old Testament, New Testament, the Quran, and that revelation is progressive in the sense that this process of sending spiritual messengers to help mankind is going to go on forever. And
Yes.
so I often wondered uh, whether another spiritual messenger will come perhaps in the future that will alert us to the presence of extraterrestrials and will be able to integrate that into a new kind of religion. Now, some people say there's already New Age religions forming about ETs, but I think the idea of progressive revelation is very helpful in dealing with the religious aspects of contact.
Yeah, I think that, and I feel that it's getting us to think about history so much as not being linear. I mean, not being linear. That it's more circular, and so every beginning has a new ending. But of course, you're going up against the perspective of, there's linear history, there's going to be A, B, C, D, and then Jesus is going to come again, and we're going to have an apocalyptic scenario, and he's going to come and stop it. It's very linear.
And very literal too, rather than
yes,
seeing this as an analogy, as a way of teaching spiritual information. They see it as a
yes.
literal ending of the world and
Exactly.
Armageddon.
Yeah, not getting that every ending is a new beginning. So it'll be interesting. I'm of a double mind. I do believe what you're saying, that is revelation. People are we're constantly evolving. We're not in arrested development. I sometimes have these discussions with people because I have some friends who say, well, if we're going to have a nuclear holocaust here, uh, the star people will come and save us from ourselves. But there's a part of me that says there may not be any more so-called saviors. Not that they were in the first place. We may have to be the ones that we're waiting for.
Mhm.
That we have to grow up, and if we're going to be part of this great cosmic family, then we're going to have to find a different way to learn to get along. And we get this technology, but our spirituality hasn't caught up with it. King said that some 35, 40, 50 years ago. And so we get technology and we make drones. We make nuclear weapons. We devise ways to kill. We can use that technology for free energy. We can use the technology to get rid of some of these diseases and what have you. But it's like giving a gun to a baby. It's very
Yes.
dangerous, very dangerous.
Yes, it really is very dangerous, and that's why people are attempting to link the presence of extraterrestrials, the UFO phenomena, to possible solutions to some of the seemingly insurmountable problems that our civilization faces. You mentioned, for example, the idea of free energy. Well, it's clear that these UFOs are not flying on fossil fuel. They have tremendous energy resources, and if the technology could be safely downloaded into our civilization, and I believe that downloading ET technology can only safely be done under conditions of world peace based on social justice. Because from my point of view as a former activist in peace and social justice causes, there can be no peace without justice, and there is no justice without peace. And so we have the promise of advancing our civilization by acquiring non-polluting energy systems that could address hunger, could address problems with air pollution, which is causing global climate change, and it's raising the level of the oceans, which by one estimate from the United Nations, if the current rate of rising seas continues, people in a country like Bangladesh, where the average height of the farming communities is about 6 feet above sea level, we can look at tens of millions of people dying by mid-century in Bangladesh because the water will rise above their rice fields.
Exactly.
And so if we had free energy, we could do all kinds of things to desalinate water and make the deserts bloom and be able to provide for our people in a planet that is radically changed because of the consequences of human burning of fossil fuels. And then there's the question of racism and the divisions that we face on this planet, men against each other because of the color of their skin. Well, if we realize that the differences between us are very little, because we are now in contact and communication with extraterrestrial beings, some of which you have described, that look radically different from us, then we can learn to get along better because we see the diversity that troubles us so much on this planet is really minimal compared to the diversity that exists out among the cosmos.
Yes.
And so these are many areas where contact could lead to solutions to these seemingly insurmountable problems.
I agree. I agree. And we're going to have to grow up really fast.
Right.
We're going to have to grow up really fast.
And if we are relying on space beings to save us, if we hate ourselves and this planet so much that all we can do is destroy one another and threaten the equilibrium of this beautiful planet, then I would posit that we do not deserve to be slaves, to be saved.
I agree with you.
If we need them to save us from ourselves, then we should
Yeah.
accept our fate and either solve our solutions, find our solutions, or accept a very likely end that will not be pretty and will involve the deaths of hundreds of millions of people
Yes.
from starvation, from climate change, and the loss of food areas. And we will also have to face the likelihood of more wars as people desperately struggle to feed themselves on a planet where mature resources are becoming less and less available.
And we have no one to blame but ourselves.
But the so-called extraterrestrials are not leaving us to stew in their juices. I'm sure there are segments of the national security state would like to see them bug off. And they are not bugging off. They're sticking around, and they're sending us messages, the kind of messages that people received, the end to nuclear weapons in the 50s. In more modern times, many contact experiencers receive messages about the need to clean up the environment. And so there is hope. They are certainly not giving up on us, and we should certainly not give up on ourselves.
I agree. I don't think we should either. What's so disconcerting, but I have the audacity to hope and to try to work, not just to hope, but to work for the kind of world I say I want myself and my daughter to live in. It's just disconcerting sometimes, but that's what it is to be human, that people can't see it. And by that, they don't have to see it the same way I do, but it's just madness what's going on. But, I do see a new world being born, and we have a choice to take this planet to another level. And even with the political situation here, I see people reaching across the aisle and talking now. I see people not taking it for granted that democracy is hard work. And It just doesn't come in on the wheels of inevitability. And so there's a blessing in all this. There's an opportunity, if we're willing to take it, if we have the courage to take it, to make this nation live out the full meaning of its creed. And we're seeing it all over the world. We're seeing it all over the world. It's making the 60s, look like a kindergarten class. There's a consciousness that is
growing.
Shifting. Yes.
Yeah, the very fact that we're free to discuss this on the radio openly, many other countries around the world, we could not have this conversation.
Not at all.
And so we're getting to the last of 15, 20 minutes of our show, and I'd like to take a break and take care of some housekeeping and to tell our audience that you're listening to Epic Voyages on the Inception Radio Network. And please visit us at epicvoyages.com for up-to-date information about our Epic Voyager projects and to view our upcoming radio show topics. From there, you can link to our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube page. You can always catch us live every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on InceptionRadioNetwork.com. IRN provides you with several opportunities to tune in. This includes listening to us live on your television set via Roku TV set-top media player. You can download the IRN app on your Android, iPhone, BlackBerry, and Amazon smartphone, or through their syndicated streaming partners like TuneIn, iTunes, and Google Play Music. This show is also available on your car stereo via Stitcher Radio's vehicle dashboard app. And lastly, if your power goes out, you can listen to us through the old-fashioned tethered lines by dialing 401-283-6700. That's 401-283-6700. The show is broadcast every Friday night on Dark Matter Digital Network as a rebroadcast at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And if you can't catch us on the air, don't worry. You can catch this show as well as hundreds of past epic programs by visiting irnshows.com. We invite you to join our conversation. The chat room has been really quiet tonight. I'm not sure if any of you guys are out there, but if you do choose to ask questions, please join us in the interactive chat room at irnchat.com. And you can get your questions and comments to us by Skyping Inception Radio Network or dialing to 888 919 2355, 888 919 BELL. And so back to our interview with Reverend Michael Carter, who is an ordained interfaith minister, and he's with us tonight talking about UFOs and the Bible. Not just the Bible, the Holy Bible, First and Second Testament, but also on the Koran, on the faiths in India, Hindi, as well as the Buddhism. But what about Native Americans? They also have a star connection, isn't that right?
Yes. Well, I have Cherokee lineage, which so many of us do in this part of the country. And yes, we're talking about the star people, as they are affectionately referred to. And in Cherokee lore, they are direct descendants of the Pleiades, which is interesting, isn't it? And they say that
I never knew that. That is
that their customs, the customs of the Cherokee, were brought to them from the Pleiades. Of course, we have in the Western tribes, the Lakota, and those nations, of numerous nations there, that talk about the star people and how they are part of this cosmos. And what is pretty much every Native American, in every Native American cosmology, you will hear about beings that have come from the sky, almost without exception. What I love about it, though, is that they talk about, especially the Lakota, that it's a mystery. And they're very comfortable with living in mystery, especially when they refer to the Creator. I think that is something that is very difficult for traditional Christianity, for instance, because there has, as you say, it has to be literal, but it also has to be this or that, right or wrong, polarity. It's kind of dualistic thinking. And I think whether it's the UFO community, whether it's our religions here in the West, I think we're going to have to get more comfortable living with mystery.
This is something that science is unwilling to take on, unfortunately. We, in the UFO community, often send out messages imploring professional or academic science to get involved with UFO studies, and they steadfastly refuse. This is unfortunate, because there was a time when science looked at the world with a sense of wonder, and was actually attempting to find mysteries to solve. And here we have, in the 21st century, science, which is professionally has tremendous power. You have scientific research institutes with billion-dollar budgets, and yet when it comes to the UFO phenomena, they're in a ridicule and denial type of mode. And this is something that I believe stems from the fact that science is big business, and that the most powerful people in our country and in the world have decided that a UFO presence, especially if it's extraterrestrial, is threatening to them.
Exactly.
And so scientists very early in their career are told, just as you were told very early in your career, that if you want to bring this subject up, you can forget about having a paycheck.
Yes.
The National Science Foundation is not going to pay for any study that investigates UFOs. And any professional scientist who has the bravery, audacity, or maybe stupidity under the current circumstances to publicly state he or she wants to study the phenomena will probably find themselves out of a job. And this is not in the spirit of science that should attempt to decipher mysteries and be unafraid of the consequences of going to where the evidence leads them. So this is important, that it's not just the struggle to understand contact in terms of the limitations of our existing belief systems, religious belief systems, but also in the context of our existing scientific belief systems.
Yes, they go hand in hand. I wanted to I mean, right now, science and religion are still, in many ways, two distant cousins who rarely, if ever, speak to each other. But I wanted to just cap it off with talking about, for instance, the Lakota cosmology. They call creator Wonka Tonkin, and it's usually been translated as the Great Spirit. However, according to the late Russell Means, its meaning is closer to Great Mystery, as Lakota spirituality is not monotheistic, which goes to the point of that the cosmologies that are not monotheistic, that make room for greater and lesser deities or gods, will adapt more to disclosure that we're not alone than the monotheistic religions, because they don't allow for these other beings to even exist.
Right, and in most extreme form, fundamentalism can lead to violence, because if you believe that because UFOs and aliens are not mentioned in the New Testament, and therefore it's not of Jesus Christ, and therefore is of the devil, and are demons, well, you don't negotiate, you don't talk to demons or devils, you destroy evil and demons. And I fear that contactees, which I consider myself one, experiencers, because we have ongoing contact and communication with the intelligence responsible for UFOs, that we will be attacked, as some people have been attacked in Russia by fundamentalist Christian groups that have attacked ufologists in the last 20 years. So I think it's very important for us to try to have dialogue with the religious community and to persuade people that this is not against religion, but it's something, well, from my personal experience, as I've described on the show, contact has been a source of very, very helpful spirituality for me personally, and I think for the larger society as well.
I agree. I think that we've got a long way to go, but I think we're making progress. What's the old Chinese adage, may you live in interesting times? And interestingly enough, the same character that they have for chaos is the same character for opportunity. And I say that we do live in interesting times, but we do have opportunities unprecedented now. That we really did not have before. And this is the time. This is the time.
Now, people out there are going to want to learn more about you and your books that you've written. Could you just tell the audience in the last few minutes that we have how they can get in touch with you, how they can get your books? We only talked about one of them, but there's two more, I understand. Is that correct?
Actually, there's four of them.
Oh, good.
They can go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNobles.com. They can contact me at Michael J as in Jerry, S as in Carter, at Sam Carter, Michael J S Carter at Gmail, or michaeljscarter.com is my website. The four books are Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials, and the Holy Bible, A New World If You Can Take It, God, Extraterrestrials, and the Evolution of Human Consciousness. There's a book called Spiritual Healing and Affirmative Prayer. And the last one is a 30-day meditation manual called God Consciousness, a 30-day manual to God-centered thinking. And again, they can just go on Amazon. This was fun. It just went so fast.
Yes, it really did. Now, you mentioned North Carolina. That's where you now live. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, here in the mountains here. Um, I've been here, 11 years, moved from New York 11 years ago, and this is where I call home.
Well, it's certainly a beautiful place. And you mentioned that your contact experiences are occurring less frequently now. What about sightings of UFOs? Have you ever had those?
I have not had sightings. I thought I've seen things, but I don't want to run and say I actually did. But there are plenty of sightings here. There's a place called Cashiers, North Carolina, that allegedly has strange lights in the sky and almost every night. I wanted to say this. I did a show. We taped it back in August. It was supposed to air in January, but it didn't happen. Then I was told that it was going to air in March. It's called UFOs, The Hidden Evidence. It's supposed to air on the American Heroes Channel, which used to be the American Military Channel, which is interesting. It's allegedly is supposed to air around the 15th of March. Look for it. I think I was a guest. I shot about 6 or 7 episodes. Nick Pope, I think, is on the first episode. Nick Pope from the British. He was in the British government and is a UFO researcher.
That's right. He was responsible for the UFO desk in the Ministry of Defense in Great Britain.
Yes.
We have about 4 minutes left, and I see not a lot of questions coming in from the chat room. So one of the things I wanted to share with the audience was another segment of the book. I gave the introduction to the book, and your writing is so clear and in many ways matches what I've learned about the phenomena in terms of the spiritual aspects, that I'd like to read how you conclude the book. And it has to do with this sense of oneness. I quote, "However, this gospel of oneness is one of the most important lessons I have learned from my contact experiences from extraterrestrial intelligence. I come to know what we call God is really an energy, a spirit, if you like, the word, a source of all consciousness, if you will, and that we are part of this consciousness. We can tap into this consciousness if we are willing to, by just being still, through meditation and prayer. You can't heal being by doing. We are called human beings, not human doings. This energy, this consciousness, this intelligence, this infinite mind moves through us, in us, and as us. It is all there is. There is nowhere we can go where this source is not present. Nowhere." That's a beautiful way of ending your book, and I'm so happy to have had the opportunity to interview you, and I'm eager to get a hold of some of your other books. They're available not only hard copy, but also as digital books. Is that correct?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
I find the digital books easier because now that I'm approaching my 8th decade of life. I must say that I enjoy being able to put those letters in big view on the digital screen.
So do I. When I write a sermon, I use 22 font. So you can. Yeah,
well,
that's
I'm up to 20 now, but I think I'm headed to 22 font.
Oh, too. Yeah, I have to.
Is there anything you want to share with us now in the last minute before we go to our outro?
I just want to say to everyone to try to just do not fear. Do not let fear ruin your life. Be the change you want to see. And when I say don't fear, we all fear. Don't live in fear. Don't let that be your MO, because it's a beautiful world. There are beautiful people on this planet and off of this planet, and that your life is precious. And do good because good is good to do. Don't worry about the outcomes. Just do it because it's what's needed at the time. The outcomes will take care of themselves.
That sounds beautiful. And I'd just like to share one statement that I wrote last month, and that is, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yes.
And look outside of yourself for kindred souls that you can work with to make that change.
Yes. Yes.
Look inside to be the change you want to see in the world. Look outside to find kindred activist souls to make that change. My name is Dr. Joseph Burkes. You've been listening to Reverend Michael Carter on the Inception Radio Network. Our program is Epic Voyages. Thank you, MJ, for being our producer. Joe Champion is not with us tonight. And for Ken Sherry for giving me the job as volunteer program director for Epic Voyages. Take care. Tune in next week. We have a wonderful program with Professor Strand from Norway talking about the Hessdalen lights. And remember, if you're outside and you see a UFO, don't just stand there with your mouth open. Signal at it or send a thought for it to move in a way to show you that it's not the Air Force or the Mexican Army on maneuvers. Good night.
Good night.
You say, cover up is fine, that's your plan, not mine. I'm ready to be told.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.